Hey, what's up, fam? This is a video that I've been teasing, or at least have said that I would make. I'm going to summarize the first half of this book from Amy Jill Levine, The Gospel According to Mark. Is this inverted for you? Do you see this backwards? Anyway, I'm going to do some green screen anyway. Amy Jill Levine, I'm just a huge fan of Amy Jill Levine. So she is a Jewish Studies New Testament professor at Vanderbilt Divinity School. Amy Jill herself is Jewish, and she discloses some of the personal reasons for her teaching and scholarship in many of her books. I try to consume everything that AJ Levine writes. What I really appreciate about her work is that she really takes efforts to make it very accessible just to general readers. She does have, I've got some of them down here. Anyway, she has some books that are certainly more scholarly, that would be for a more advanced general reader, like A Misunderstood Jew is a great example of a book that would be more appropriate for an advanced general reader, but a lot of her content she makes specifically for general readers. This book right here, A Beginner's Guide to the Good News, is kind of like a commentary that runs right alongside the Gospel of Mark. But what I appreciate about Amy Jill is that she's a Jewish person, trained in Jewish studies, but addressing a mostly Christian audience. And I really try to lift up kind of a Jewish perspective myself and direct content more toward Christian audiences, because I think it's really useful to educate Christians about Judaism and the historical context for Jesus, the one that they call the Christ. So let me just summarize the first. I'm going to do another video when I finish the book, and we'll do the second half of the book, but I'm halfway through it. Rather than one video on all of it, let's just do 10 minutes right now on the first half of the book. I summarized Paula Fredrickson, a chapter from a Paula Fredrickson book, several videos ago, a few days ago. That was also a 10-minute video kind of unpacking that full chapter. If you like these chapter and book summaries, man, I want to keep making them. Part of what I think I can do on this app is to direct you toward resources to enhance your own learning. Maybe you're watching scholars like McClellan or Aaron, ABH Bible, and they certainly are the scholars that are producing material, and they're providing their own education, which is awesome, and I hope you're following them. Something that I can do as a lay student of the text is to direct you towards resources. Sorry. So let's dig into the first half of this book from Amy Jill Levine. Feel free to pause here. I'll move my head out of the way. Here is the actual book, Amy Jill Levine, The Gospel of Mark, A Beginner's Guide to the Good News. Now, here's the table of contents. You can see how Amy Jill Levine is just like chunked off the Gospel according to Mark into like chapter chunks. And then she kind of unpacks these through commentary. You can see the overall length of the book is about 150 pages, really accessible, digestible material, which is what I've come to expect and appreciate about Professor Levine's writing. And we get super useful content like this that I think is informative to Christian readers. That salvation, originally, in its context, salvation is not about necessarily the afterlife. It's about here and now salvation. We have to remember that in the first century in Roman-occupied Palestine, this is a tough life. This is an agricultural, mostly poor, peasant kind of community who is under militarized occupation from Rome. So salvation, it's not tied to like eternal life as people think about a relationship with Jesus today as being saved for eternity. It was about salvation in the here and the now. During the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, for example, the people are saying, Hosanna, save us. It means literally like deliver us from this oppressive life that we are living under occupation. Here she's discussing Mark's use and appeal to the prophets from the tradition of Israel and repurposing those texts. I cannot say this often enough. The Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, is not a prophecy forward toward Jesus. No, it's the gospel writers repurposing prophetic material in other places from the scriptures of Israel and putting that repurposing in service of proclamations about Jesus. And Professor Levine does a really nice job of unpacking these stories from the Hebrew Bible and seeing how Mark is putting them, again, in service of Jesus. So like on this page, actually throughout this whole chapter here, in several pages, she's talking about the story of Jezebel from the Hebrew Bible, who killed many of the prophets of the God of Israel. Also connecting this to the story of Esther, who is in a foreign land, who, because of the sort of royal court that wants to kill the Jews. There's a story happening here with Esther. In the Markan account, Professor Levine is connecting this to like Herod, and Herod Antipas and Herod's wife. So you can see how these like Hebrew Bible stories work their way into the gospel accounts, because the gospel authors are repurposing these old texts to tell new stories, but this time to tell stories about Jesus, because that's who they were proclaiming. So here, like Esther and the story of Jezebel, these are significant stories from the tradition of Israel. And here, Professor Levine is giving some insight and some alternative commentary to maybe what some Christian communities have been taught as just like the conventional wisdom on some of these disagreements between the Jesus movement and then like the Pharisees, for example. Here, Professor Levine is pointing out, like, listen, this Jesus movement was open to Gentiles, even commissioning Gentiles, and that maybe it is when the Pharisees are complaining about the observance of the Sabbath rules for Jesus' community, that Professor Levine is suggesting, well, maybe it was some of these Gentile followers. It is the case that Gentiles are not held to the same sort of commandments or halachic or Jewish law codes as are binding for the people of Israel. The Gentiles are not held to the same level of law observance. And that was the case. That is the case even today. This is why, like Christians who seek to keep Torah, that is not consistent with the tradition of Israel, because the Torah commandments are binding on the people of Israel, Am Yisrael, or of Jews. That's where the Torah covenant is binding, not on Gentiles. So I think Professor Levine is drawing out some really helpful commentary that when there is disagreement about the Jesus movement and its Torah observance, we have to remember this is potentially a mixed group of both Gentiles and Jewish people. And so Professor Levine has a nice discussion of that in this book, that maybe the Pharisees are also criticizing those who are within the Jesus movement, but those who are Gentile followers. We know that in the first century, especially between what Paul was doing as an apostle, as he saw himself, to the pagans, and what was happening in Jerusalem, that there was a split in the Jesus movement, that some people thought, listen, these Gentiles who want to be Christ followers do need to convert to Judaism. So like kosher dietary laws and circumcision, whereas other missionaries from the Jesus movement, like Paul, did not think that those Gentiles needed to convert to Judaism in order to be Christ followers. So this is like a hot debate in the first century, and it plays out in the Pauline epistles, and it plays out in the gospel accounts as well. So just more really helpful insight and commentary from Professor Levine. And so I hope that summary from the first half of this book, just very recently out. I mean, it was out at the beginning of August, and we're just mid-August right now. The Gospel of Mark, A Beginner's Guide to the Good News from Amy Jo Levine, accessible. I would really recommend this for Christian communities to read in study, maybe together. Professor Levine has another book, Entering the Passion of Jesus, Beginner's Guide to Holy Week, for 2 years in a row now, and I'll probably do it again this upcoming year. For 2 years in a row, I've facilitated a book study for a predominantly Christian community, but reading that Beginner's Guide to the Holy Week, also by Amy Jo Levine. All of her stuff that is like labeled a beginner's guide is truly that. It's accessible, and it's really friendly to Christian communities. It's written from a Jewish perspective, but it is just to educate, to inform, to correct misconceptions, super approachable, and acknowledges Christian apologetic and confessional attitudes. Amy Jo Levine is like very cheap, like provides some praise for the Jesus story, for the Jesus movement, for the Gospels. She really locates her own Jewish identity in some of the themes in the Gospel accounts. So there's just a quick, like several minute summary on the Gospel of Mark from Amy Jo Levine, just out this month, at the beginning of August 2023. I hope that summary was helpful. I'm going to keep reading that book. It won't be the next video that I make. It'll be a few videos down the road, but I'll do another summary video for the second half of the book. Maybe that's helpful to you. Check out the book. Check out Amy Jo Levine. Okay. Much love. Peace out.